What's up, folks? We're going to be looking at some race data today. The Barkley Fall Classic 50K race is happening next week. In preparation for my hopeful entry into the race, I've scraped off the last 9 years worth of race data from the Ultra Signup website. We're going to be doing all this in Google Sheets. We're going to clean up the data. We're going to prepare it for analysis. We're going to use SQL because you can use a querying function and use SQL commands inside Google Sheets. And then we're going to make this nice little dashboard that you see behind me with probably too much information on it. Let's go. Here's what's up. We've got race results that we need to pull from each of these years. Here's 2022, for example, from Ultra Signup over into our spreadsheet. So what I've got is I went ahead and I pulled in all of the URL addresses for each of the result pages. The way that they organize it here, there's a page for marathon results and there's a page for 50K results. On each page, there are finishers and did not finishers, the DNF, the did not finish category. And then there's the DNS category where people that did not even start the race. This year, 2022, nobody did not finish the 50K, so everybody that started it finished it. But on the marathon page, we've got finishers, and then we've got a bunch of did not finishers. You can see my name is not there, but I am way down the list, one of the final marathon finishers. Very poor performance last year. I was a week out of COVID and could not breathe for most of that. What was it? 12 hours and 45 minutes. Terrible. All right. Each of these years has results for 50K and marathon. And if we go back to the main page, you see how it's only 2015 right here? Let's go back here and go 2014. They actually called it a 30 miler in the first year. So we've got a list of data for the 30 miler inaugural year that we'll pull in as well. Okay, the first thing that I thought that I would do would, be smart and say something like import HTML. Let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. Import HTML, and then I would use all these URLs to bring in the tables because they are organized as a table. To the spreadsheet. And that worked, but all it worked for was this list of the result year dates. And in fact, it didn't even bring over 2014 for that. The problem is with Ultra Signup, the way that they have their data organized, let me go into one of the year's results here. It is in a table. So you can see down here, we've got all these table rows and then table data in the rows. However, if we inspect the HTML itself and we scroll down, it's not rendered properly. So it's rendered with JavaScript, I presume. Now, I will tell you one thing that I was curious to know did work, and that is with our good buddy Excel. If you were to try this in Excel, you would be able to come up here to the data tab and say import from web. You can give it the URL just the same way as we tried to do the import HTML from Google Sheets. And in whatever way they fetch data in Excel, it is a better experience in that it will pull this data down. And you can see the tables here. There's the table we need. You can load it into the sheet right there, or you can even transform it using Power Query that opened in the other window here. And you can do some manipulation, some transformation, and then close and load. And you will pull in that same table of data. Just an FYI there. We're not going to do that today. We're not going to be living in Excel, but it does have a better import experience if that's something that you're interested to know about. Back to the real game. So over here, since I couldn't use import HTML on all these addresses, I went to all of them separately, so you don't have to. And what I've done is I have copy and pasted all of the tables. I just got each table. It didn't take that long, but I've copy and pasted it in here into one gigantic list so that you will have access to this full list to do whatever you want to with it. it's only 3,000, a little over 3,000 rows. It's not super big, but, it is significant. If it had been, tens of thousands of rows and many, many web pages, we probably should have done that in Excel using that import feature. But I digress. The things that I have added also are the race column, the year column, and the full name column. So I just concatenated the first and last name just to give everybody's full name in there so we could use it in our results, in our analysis. And then I added the years for each year, as well as you can see the race type. I put these race types into play. I've plugged those in where applicable, and we've basically now got all of our raw data. All right, let's start answering some questions. I've got our results dashboard here. I've gone ahead and pre-formatted stuff just to not waste time doing that. And now let's go through kind of how we would go about getting this data. So the first thing we need is most finishes. The first thing we do in a query statement is we query data. So our race data is in this named range called race data. And then we're going to select, and I'm using the column notation. So I've got select col 7, count col 7, where col 2 equals n2. So let's just talk about all that. First of all of these graphs will be controlled by this drop-down list up here in N2. So I can toggle back and forth between 50K and marathon results. Now, the first thing I'm doing is I'm selecting what columns I want to be returned. If we hop over here in our data list, that's why I've got this row 1, so I can see that this right here, the full name is column 7. So I want to return column 7, and then I want to return count of col 7. That just means how many times these guys and gals have finished this race, or the marathon race, as the case may be. Okay, so that's how we're getting those results, col 7, count col 7, and the condition is that col 2 is equal to n2. So col 2, you can see, is that race column. This is the column, one of them that I had to add, and I actually added both of those. The full name, I combined the first and last name. But the column 2 I added so that we get all of the actual results of finishers are in the 50K race or the marathon race, or the 30-mile race, as the case may be, but I'm not pulling those into these results. Although perhaps maybe I should, but I'm not going to. Okay, so we've got that. Then we want to group them by col 7. So we're just going to group them by their name. So I want all of each of these names grouped together, and then I want them ordered by count descending. So we're ordering it by top to bottom, the most at the top, because we want most finishes. If we left this blank, it defaults to ascending, so it would have only the lowest ones listed here. And also, I'm limiting it to the top 10. True is our headers, so that means that it's going to display full name, which was the header in our data. Okay, next up. How about the fastest and slowest finishers? All right, I've got a spot for that down here. And what we're going to use for it are two very similar query statements. All right, so we've got this same basic query format. This time we're still grabbing the race data, and then we're selecting all these columns. And all these columns, as you can see down here, it's the year, the race, the place, the full name, the division, that's male or female, the division place, so the place in their own division, the time, and the rank. So we're selecting those by column, and then we're saying the condition of where 4 is equal to 1. So that's where, what's 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the place. So if they placed first and column 2 is equal to N2. So in the race, 50K, or marathon, if I change that to marathon, and we're going to order it by column 13. And that's the time column, I believe. Let's go back to our data and see column 13. There it is, the time. And then we are going to limit it just to the top 5 here and keep the headers in like so. Now you'll see an extra little thing over here. I've got a little graph that's based on the maximum time of these and what percentage each of these racers finished. So the smallest bar here, kind of like your Strava times or your Strava splits, the smallest bar is the fastest one. The way we're doing this, it's kind of a complicated looking formula. This is just kind of bonus mode in Google Sheets. First, we're going to catch any errors. If something screws up here, we don't want anything to be displayed. So I've got a double quote at the very end. But if it's not an error, then we're using Sparkline as a function to create this chart type bar. So it's creating a bar chart, which is the one where it's horizontal bars. We're using the data in H48, and I'm dragging it down so each of these will be used respectively, the time data. And what we're doing is we're grabbing a maximum time by saying max, which is just one of the optional options in the Sparkline function. We're telling it what the max will be, and I've got dollar signs here using an absolute value because I only want all of these functions to look at this absolute range of all the times and grab the maximum value. And then we're just making the color match the green color that we're using in the rest of this graph. So that's all that is. And then you drag it down and you've got this nice little graph for everybody to use. Okay, we're doing the exact same thing over here in the slowest finishes. Only difference is when we order it by time, we're going to do descending. So that's going to give the slowest finishers of the race. So these people came in, I mean, these guys and gals had to work the hardest because they spent the most time. You can see here, twice the fastest finisher time they spent out on the course. A lot of suffering out there. I know I was in the back of the pack last year and it was quite brutal. All right, let's look at some data by state, finishes by state. No surprise here, Tennessee's out in the lead because we're local. It's just in our backyard for some of us. But we are using the query statement on that race data. We're selecting simply the call 9, which is the state column, and the count call 9, so we're adding up the occurrences of each. Where call 2, which is the race, is equal to N2 up here. Group by 9, order by count column 9, and then descending, limit 10. So this is the most finishes by state. All we would need to do to check out the least finishes by state, and it's actually international folks taking the prize here, is to just take away that descending modifier. Okay, what about unique people running this actual race? Unique starters. Well, we just need to count a bunch of people, right? So I'm counting the full name. And this is another reason why I added that full name column. Count call 7, where call 2 does not equal do not start or disqualified. So everybody that showed up, whether they finished, didn't finish, finished the race they set out to finish or not, anybody that did not finish is included here. So we got 2,827 unique names. Then the next thing we'll do is check out the total finishes. So it's actually a larger number than the allure of this race might be led to believe. The way I did this was I just used a count if function. So count if race type is equal to 50K or 30 miler or marathon. I actually didn't use SQL for this one. This will just count up each of these numbers and then add them together. Same thing down here for the did not finish. I counted if it was the did not finish marathon, 50K or 30 miler. And then we got our percentages therein. There we go. Next up, we've got all the winners here. So for this one, we're going to use our handy query statement again, and it's really not that difficult. Now we just want to see what data we want to display and have a condition here where column 12, which is the place, is equal to 1. Actually, it's not the place. I take that back. Coming back to our data, it's the division place. So I wanted all the division places to be 1. And that's all we have to do for this. And this gives us each year's winning male and female both. And we can toggle. We haven't done this in a minute. We can toggle the marathon or the 50K on and off. And I'm using that Sparkline graph here that we talked about earlier as well in the exact same fashion. Just grabbing the times, getting the max in this absolute value, and then comparing each individual time. So we've got our bar graph just to see that, hey, down here, it looks like Scott in 2015, far and away the fastest winner. Let's add a chart. What we have here is a chart from all of our winners' data. So when you initially add a chart, you come up here and you select all this data and you say Insert Chart. I've already done that, so we're just going to talk about all the options you get once you've done that. When you have a chart here, if you double click in it, it'll pop up your chart editor, which my face is now in the way of, so I'm going to remove it. In the chart editor, it's going to say the data range, so if you've got something wrong, you can adjust it here. Then we're going to check out our x-axis. A lot of times it's smart enough to pull things in relatively well. Sometimes you will have to do a lot of adjusting though. Here, the year is my x-axis, as you can see on the x-axis down there. And then the series I'm using is the time series. So I wanted to display the time, and then I have the time over here on the y-axis. It'll give you some options to use columns as headers, things like that, which obviously you're going to want to do in this case. And also, I added a label here for division. So this is what I had initially, and I wanted to see the male and female. So you pop a label on there, you go into division, and then voila. Okay, then from there we can customize our chart any which way we like. There's a lot of options here. There are, however, not near as many options as you will find in Excel. This is a weak area for Sheets. It is robust, but I wish it were a little better. Case in point, we don't even have all the fonts in here, so it's not matching the fonts I'm using. A lot of other stuff that's just not as robust. But I digress because it's good enough for what we need to do. You can change, as I've done, the fill color to get it to match stylistically everywhere here because this is about visualization after all. Then you can toggle on or off data labels, and there's our first chart. Now I've added a couple more in the same fashion. Here is the number of finishes. This is basically we could have done a Sparkline chart for this one just in a cell, but this is taking the data over here in most finishes and using it as a bar chart. And again, I should note you can change the chart style in this way, column to bar, and so forth and so on. Here we've got a pie chart for most finishes by state. We're not taking all the finishes into account. This is just based on this selection over here. So you can see if I change this down to ascending order, then it would have all of those in equal portions because everybody's just got one finish each there. So we're just looking at these top 10 finishes and showing it in pie chart format. Then we've got one more pie chart here for finishes of any type. So despite this being quite a difficult race, yes, most people can get to the finish line of at least the marathon. What about the 50K, you say? Well, let's just go ahead and do one more query right here. Let's grab our race data. Let's select count, call 7, where call 2 equal to N2. And look at there, you actually do have to go lowercase on the O and the L. Now, here's a much different story, right? So this is 50K finishes, and actually only 39.5% of people can pull in a 50K finish. So that's perhaps a sobering look at if you are expecting to finish the actual full race, the chances are pretty much cut in half. Hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that I get in this year's race. I will update you if I do after the fact. Hopefully we'll have another 50K finish after my 2021 inaugural performance. At any rate, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out as I am growing this year and putting out regular content. I've got a newsletter that's free to sign up for. You can find that and all the other links to follow me and check out my stuff in the description below. You're awesome. Have a great one.